focused on the ease of doing business for made in Nigeria companies. Just talk to us, give me, I would say, three policies that you have come up with over the past year to make it easier for made in Nigeria businesses to do business here in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. First, since this is the first time I'm having to speak at this very summit, let me acknowledge my colleagues here. I've been coming to the summit for many years as a private sector player. So for me, it's an honor to be serving our country and to be sitting here to talk about policy as part of the government. And this may not sound as if it is important, but I think it's extremely symbolic and important that many of us who have been part of the private sector, part of the country, and have been part of this dialogue for a while, have been invited to serve in the government. I mean, some, frankly, in the case of the vice president, actually, contested an election and won, but some of us were invited into the government to serve. And I think that's something that is important because, for me, I know the responsibilities we carry. You asked for three policies, and I'll do exactly that.
Thank you.
Let me start with the one which you used to frame your question, which His Excellency Vice President referred to. One of the first policy commitments this government made, at least as it relates to my ministry as well as to the economy in general, is the recognition that we have to crack this issue of enabling environment and ease of doing business. Mm-hmm. And that we have to crack it systematically and institutionally. I've been coming to the summit since 1998 when I returned to Nigeria. Every year, you can roughly frame the dialogue and the outputs as enabling environment. I mean, it's cast in several ways, but eventually, it's a pervasive point that cuts across. And one of the commitments we've made is that we will crack it. And how are we going about it? First, the president has issued a presidential sort of, let me call it directive or policy that, there should be a presidential council that is interministerial, chaired by the vice president, and all the ministers here and other ministers are part of that interministerial council to deal with those constraints that get in the way of doing business at a very granular and operational level. Mm-hmm. Now, in order to do that, we have to set up a secretariat that is going to drive it, and we decided to do it, not to reinvent the wheel, using NIPC, Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, but the secretariat itself is called Ease of Doing Business and Enabling Environment Council. It's called, the council is there's a presidential council and there's a secretariat called EBIS, Ease of Doing Business Secretariat. Now, we've identified private sector leadership for it. In fact, the retiring partner or managing partner of KPMG has been helping us set it up, and hopefully we'll go on to drive it. And the Interministerial Council has met at least twice. Now, the point to make on that is that there are times when you have to keep faith with a process till you get a result. 1 year looks like a long time when you're going through pain, but in the context of building a nation, it's actually a relatively short time. I am fully persuaded that this will bear fruit. And part of it is just because we have the responsibility. And I can assure you that it's going to happen. And we're going to work with the private sector, the kind of people in this room to do it. Is it an easy thing to do? Not really. Can it be done? Yes. Does it take commitment from the private sector and the public sector? The answer is yes. And there is nothing more to do other than to do it. Like you said, we can keep talking about it. I mean, it's been made public. And many of the people here have actually offered help. I mean, some people in the room have, offered help by way of people, by way of resources. So that's one policy. The second one has to do with, at the heart of made in Nigeria is industrialization, or value adding and manufacturing and so on. If you cut through what you need to do there, we already have the right policy in terms of what you might call a plan. And this plan actually predates this government, the Nigeria Industrial Revolution Plan. The real issue is how do you implement that plan? Given that the things it talks about, if you are a student of business, as some of us are, and you read the things it talks about, some of those things are easier said than done. But there are 2 points in it that we must follow through on in order to get the results. One is what I call the principle of selectivity, being selective. Because the key to effectiveness, as you know, is to be selective. You can't do everything. You can't be jack of all trades. So that policy identifies the areas where Nigeria can compete. Not surprisingly, agro-processing, and there are a number of plans being put in place there. Not surprisingly, some of the petrochemical areas that the vice president talked about, not surprisingly, light manufacturing, and so on. Now, in order to make it happen, you identified one of the key points, which is that given that we can't provide infrastructure adequately everywhere at the same time, We need to then focus on specific zones or industrial parks where we'll do it. And we've taken a number of steps to make sure we achieve that. Now, you have to understand that the issue of industrial parks and specific zones have been talked about for a long time. In fact, it's almost like the flavor of the month. But if you are going to implement it, you have to get help. So one of the things we've done, we're working with the former chief economist of the World Bank, who is a Chinese gentleman, Professor Justin Lin, who is working with us. He's worked with other countries like Ethiopia, Rwanda, and of course China itself, where he comes from, to put in place some demonstration industrial parks. And that process is ongoing, where we will make sure that there are adequate infrastructure and facilities, like you said. By the way, a number of states and a number of private sector initiatives are already going on, as you know, whether it's in the oil and gas area or what the Ogun State government tried to do with the Chinese and so on. But we are committed to making sure there are a number of these models that will work to global standards that will be put in place. Clearly, it will take 2 to 3 years to complete. That's going on. I think the final thing I want to talk about that would help in terms of policies is those things we're doing to help SMEs are some of the most vulnerable. Like the Vice President talked about, the social intervention funds or the social program we want to run. We would like to see a chunk of it go to help some of the most vulnerable people in society who are involved in business, be it market women, be it artisans. And that's both policy and frankly, part of the budget. And that's something we're implementing as we speak. So what I would say, as I summarize, is that I think these policies will take time to settle or to work, but I have no doubt that they will come through.
Enabling environment is one that a lot of Nigerians, and I know I'm speaking for quite a few, who are very excited about it because they know how difficult it can be. And that's part of the reason why global competitiveness rating of Nigeria has been consistently low for a while. In terms of enabling environment, what specifics and timeline do we have from governments that makes it such that if we're going to struggle for the next 3 months, we know that in 3 months' time, if you go to CAC, you'll be able to register your company. In 6 months' time, you'll be able to achieve so. So that with that, we can use the yardstick and say the government will be able to do this. So in 6 months, we have specifics that we can hold on to.
Let me underscore that point in a slightly different way. What you're saying, in effect, is that you can talk about this all you like. Until you do it, it's not going to happen. And frankly, we've been talking about enabling environment, ease of doing business. It turns out it's very operational. I remember talking to Shea Bickerstead, who is the gentleman I said is going to. And one of the points he made to me, which is one of the reasons I know he's the right sort of person to get involved, is that this has to be very operational. In other words, you have to get into the nuts and bolts of actually making it easy for people to do business. You use CAC as an example. CAC, I know, has tried to basically use technology to speed up business registrations. And just to use the example, so they went to 2 cities with the World Bank, who does the ease of doing business rankings. They went to Lagos. They said they had done the full, and they said, we don't believe you. So the next time, when he went to Kano, he actually demonstrated where he was at. We're not yet where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be. I think you can now register businesses in a matter of, maybe a couple of days if you use the system they've put in place. But it's going to get better. The point is that we've identified 6 areas that we intend to start with. Business registration is one. We're also going to work on understanding what it takes to get credit, we also want to work on, some of the other areas where people need to get help, whether it's in terms of land registrations, or in terms of some of the approvals you need, from government, whether it's things like SON, NAFDAC, and so on. All these things are going to happen. The point I want to make about them is that, the reason why I told you that we're going about it institutionally and setting up this process, even though it's taking some time, my belief is that, you will start seeing results, certainly from the end of the year, and we'll follow that pattern. Now, the last thing to say is that, we also need to communicate, as we've been told. So one of the things we're hoping to do as we launch the actual implementation, we're also getting help from some consultants, some of whom are here. One of the things we intend to do is to communicate better. So I'll just say stay tuned, but there is no question that everything we have said, is going to happen.